I work at OpenTable, which is here. And during the day, I work on not Node, and at night, I work on making chatbots, because I like chatbots. But that begs the question, why chatbots? Well, one of the reasons you might want a chatbot is you have 24/7 availability. You can triage and handle customer support, either autonomously or hands-off. You can simplify the user experience. And it can also be good for PR stunts. In case any of you don't remember Microsoft's Taybot, that was a failed PR stunt. So I want to talk about the simplifying user experience part, and I'll take the example of transferring money between accounts for a bank. So to do this, I'm going to measure the effort it takes to do something on a website. And here we have our effort counter. So our first step is to log in, select our account, select transfer money, select the account to transfer to, the frequency, the transfer date, the amount, and finally, we have done the transfer. Now let's run the same comparison on transferring money with the chatbot. You generally are going to be within your chat context. Let's call it Facebook Messenger. You click on your bank, and you say blankly what you want. They respond with something saying they understand and some link. They allow you to securely log in, and your transfer has been initiated. Significantly less effort. The idea here being your website is a deep tree of actions that a user wants to be able to do, but they have to navigate to the leaves. Chatbot flattens the tree and allows you to access each of those leaves through a more natural language for humans. So today I'm going to be talking about chatbots specifically with Microsoft's BotBuilder framework. And there's several good things that come from this framework. One of them is zero effort multi-channel support. So right off the bat, I write a bot, and I immediately get Twilio, Slack, Messenger, and a lot of other support without any additional effort. Microsoft also made a NLP service, natural language processing, called Lewis.ai that integrates well with the BotBuilder framework. Additionally, there's adaptive card support. So if you want to style a card with buttons, carousels, or have a background, you would have to customize that for every platform. With adaptive cards, it transforms it on your behalf and standardizes it across every platform, like Slack or Messenger. The free tier is amazing. Any of the channels that they support off the bat costs $0 and 0 cents per message. Nothing better than free. And then the support from the team is great. If you ever have an issue, open it up on GitHub, and they respond very quickly and try their best to close the issues as they come in. So when it comes to building a bot, there's a few different concerns. You're going to have prompts, some of them pre-built. You can make your own, but that's how you interact with the user and get feedback. You have session, which is a context bound to that user and that current state for the user. And then there's user management and dialogue management, which are both handled by the BotBuilder framework. So now when user A comes in and user B comes in, it can appropriately assign the correct session or context to that user and that request coming in. And for dialogue management, it allows you to not need to worry about picking up where you left off last. So the real meat of this presentation is talking about testing bots. So we're focusing in on the BotTester framework. But before we get there, it's important to talk about what existed before it was written. So Microsoft recommends using the Emulator, which I'll show in a minute. And they have a non-official but official approach that is without the BotTester framework. So let's move over and actually look at a bot that I have written, if I can find it. Here we go. So here I just have a bunch of constants because I like to use not magic words. Good. Awesome. So I like to avoid magic words, so I use a bunch of constants. Allows it to easily reference itself. And then here, universal bot is just the name of the bots being made. Connectors are how the bot actually receives messages from whatever service that is handling it for you. In most cases, if you're using this, it'll be Microsoft's Azure service. Next up is this array here, which is a waterfall of actions, much like any other middleware waterfall you may see. And then the first step that we're doing here, the bot is asking about colors, because that's just super interesting. But first thing is, we're going to have some state. So we have some text for recollection. What's my favorite color? If that color exists, we repeat it. Otherwise, say you don't have it, and continue. Then we're going to show a prompt to the user. That prompt will say, what's your favorite color? And then it gives you a bunch of options. And lastly, after the user responds, we rip out the choice from that prompt, save the value, and then operate on that choice and send a response. So I'm going to actually turn this on, and we will test it out in the emulator. So this is the emulator, and I will try to make it as large as I can. We can connect to the local instance. Now, these are unique values assigned by Microsoft when you create your bot in their service, and allows you to connect to the connector. And the bot's pretty dumb, so I can say anything, and it's going to respond. Eventually, there we go. What's my favorite color? I really like yellow. So I'm going to say yellow, and wow, yellow is mellow. Wow, so amazing. But I can also then follow up and ask, what's my favorite color? I want to make sure my spelling and capitalization is right, because I naively checked. And it's going to respond with yellow. It persists our state. So let's move over and actually look at the tests around it as recommended initially by Microsoft. So the tests here are kind of messy. You start by listening for outgoing messages on the bot. You keep track of where you are with a counter within the conversation, and then you run assertions, and then continue on through the conversation through the connector. Now, something I want to point out here is this connector is a console connector, so it's connecting to your terminal, which can only accept text in and out, and there's only one user. So that means is you can only test text here. I'll get back to that a bit later. So this is kind of hard to read, but it'll work. So let's actually run those tests. And we'll notice we have a failure here. So following proper dev practices, there was TDD for this. So this last step here is, can we inspect session state directly? And unfortunately, this implementation, because we are operating solely through the connector, cannot inspect the state. It's impossible. So I found these to be some problems. So to get around that, I made the BotTester framework. Well, that ruins it. But I assigned some emojis to help us remember what is and isn't good. We have the emulator, not so great, the old approach, and the new approach, which we're going to be jumping into now, or after this slide. This is just going over the details again. The old approach just never gives a good way to scale, read, maintain, or even a full scope of what you need to test. So moving back over, we're going to look at the BotTester approach. Now, again, following TDD, I have already predefined my tests over here. They're the same as the test on the other side. And we can't see it again. My apologies. All right, are we back? Great. So on the right here, we have the tests for the BotTester implementation, and on the left here, we have the old approach. So I'm going to comment these out because you probably don't want to watch me do all of them. But we can now rewrite this option 1 test, and we'll see how much more simple it becomes. So we return a new BotTester instance, allowing us to run. We pass in our bot, and then we just start by sending messages to the bot. hello. And we're going to expect to get the option prompts as a response. Next up, I'm going to say option 1. And I would expect the response to option 1. And then lastly, we're going to run the test, which just returns a promise that allows this to resolve and for us to know when this is done. And we can run this test. And something I want to show here is notice the output from this test as opposed to the output from these tests. The difference is with the console connector, you're going to pollute your tests with a bunch of console prints, which makes them a little more annoying to read. Now, jumping back over here into the tests, I want to inspect this last case where you can actually look at the context that is bound to the user that you otherwise couldn't previously. So the BotTester makes this easy. Just build a new instance again. I'm going to cheat and actually take this, copy it down here, and we can actually check the session state. So we can check session, and we can run assertions against it. So initially, we don't have any values saved. So session user data favorite color should be null, or rather undefined. But after we run our test, we would expect it to be equal to option 1. And run test. And we'll see that this runs the test, and the test should pass. Amazing. There's a few other nice features like introducing delays or your standard then notation for handling promises. And all those details can be found in the documentation in the service on GitHub. So now I want to move to the second part of this is I wrote this and I like other people to use it. So how do you gain a presence with your open source packages? Well, my first recommendation is to make a memorable handle or library name. For me, I chose to change my handle to Microsoftly. I think you can figure it out from there. You should be documenting everything. So I use Typescript, which is really great, helped me fix bugs. The underlying framework also relied on Typescript. If you looked while I was coding, you would see all of my different definitions popping up and pre-populating, and it's reliable. Additionally, Typedocs can generate HTML for a hosted visual of your documentation of all your classes and your methods. For all feedback you get, you should be constantly pushing for it and following up on it. I'll come back to this later because it happened to work out well for me. You should be adding every positive badge you possibly can to your README because that gains trust. When I see your build is passing, a high version number, and lots of coverage, I'm probably going to be more inclined to use your service. I'll be returning to CircleCI in a moment. But with those two checks, coverage and tests, you should be gating your PRs with tests and coverage. The reason being that ensures a minimum amount of quality going into your code base and shows that you're serious about what you're writing. So if I'm deciding whether or not to use this new open source package, if you have this, I'm more likely to use it. Next up is building a published CI/CD pipeline for your Node module. This one's not necessary, but it's useful to have, and I'll show you why, and it just makes it easier, and again, makes you more believable and trustworthy. So here is my CircleCI instance for the BotTester, and I'm going to click, I keep forgetting to cancel out. All right. Here is the CircleCI page for the BotTester, and we're going to pretend that I just pushed to master, and we will rerun this. And while this is running, I want to show you the CircleCI config. So it's super simple to set up testing on PRs and setting up publishing. Just a few lines of config. Then next you go into your workflow, you define what to actually run. So PR build should run on everything. And then for publish, only on pushes to master that have the notation v number.number.number, then I don't really trust myself. So before we publish, we're going to wait for approval. So let's pop back over to our case over here. And we're actually running the tests here. After the test's finished, I would have a manual hit OK button, which we will see here. If I click this, we would try to publish, but nothing's new. So I'm going to actually skip that. And I always recommend presenting your projects at meetups. I hear SFNode is a great place to start. It's where I got mine on May 3rd of 2018. It's today. Thank you. And lastly, spam all the forums. And when I say spam, I mean spam, 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 spam. Now, the thing to note specifically is this last one is not me. So this account, Billy By 91, belongs to a guy named Martin down in Uruguay. I know this because he's one of the contributors to my repo. When he opened the first issue on the repo, I followed up with him and had a 30 or 40 minute long hangout with him, asking everything from what are you using with it, what are your pipelines like, what do you plan to do, what do you need from it, how can we make it better. And with that, he had one of his friends also join in, so we now have 3 contributors, and they help push the package onto others. And this is when I knew I actually made it successfully. And that is how we test chatbots. Questions?
Yeah, I was just curious, is there like a Medium post about a lot of this stuff? Because it's really awesome, and I think Medium posts are pretty accessible.
Yes, it's entitled exactly the same and goes into slightly less detail. It was published a while ago. It was when I first started writing this. But yes, if you would like me to, I could Medium. I tried to turn that into a verb. I can't. I can put something comparable onto Medium.
Yeah, I guess I wonder, the follow-up question would be, this has 2 components. The first was about the framework, and the second was about how to make a good open source project. I don't know, are those both in the Medium post?
No, they aren't. I specifically added the open source part to emphasize the real key of this talk, which is I'm pushing my package on you. Wow, that came out wrong. But I'm really trying to get the package in use in the open source community. So just going to talks and talking about it at length really helps drive the message home. Any other questions?
Hi, great talk. You said you're doing this afterward?
So this specifically I wrote to help facilitate something I'm doing here at OpenTable. I'm working on some experimental chatbot stuff. Not sure how much I'm allowed to say beyond that, but I could not write a full production-ready pipeline if I didn't have tests that could run autonomously and reliably at scale and be maintainable. So this was required for me to make anything work.
Any concern it might cause too much work, too much attention
To
the day for you?
like this as a drain?
Yeah.
No, because I mean at the end of the day I was writing it for me because I wanted it. And then other people started using it, and then it became fun just figuring out how to bootstrap and get users. So like just tracking it through Google Analytics for the hosted doc page and through GitHub traffic. I know that it's in use for 3 or 4 companies for their CI/CD pipeline, just looking at Atlassian tickets and other referrals. So yeah, this just feeds into itself. It's exciting to see people using something you made.
Do you have to use React or I noticed you're using all React.
Oh, that's Typescript. That's just, it transpiles to JavaScript. One of the reasons I like chatbots is I'm a back-end developer, and they come with a pre-made front end. So I actually don't need to know any front end to get this out to production and people using it. So no React.
Probably we were talking about state and everything.
Yeah, the state management is just part of the context that's built into the framework.
Any last questions? That's it?
Yeah, just one more. So I noticed you were using something like chai for the assertion, or what was the actual library?
Mocha chai.
Oh, Mocha chai. So yeah, so it would be cool to see your bot testing framework include like, expect this message to return this other message or something, rather than the syntax that you were using in the example.
So we actually can do that. So let's see. I don't know where to go here, but
He's going to make this in about a minute.
yeah, you can run expectations against events, non-text-based interactions, and then if you were worried about not having compatibility for your framework, we've abstracted the assertion library as well, so it's easy to plug in new libraries to it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.